Assistant Secretary Evans, you and I spoke last year discussing pipelines and some of the concerns that my constituents have. And I was going to ask you some questions on updating me on what you all were doing related to pipeline cybersecurity and coordination. You answered those questions earlier when Ranking Member Upton was asking questions, and so I appreciated those answers. I'm going to skip those questions that I would have asked because I don't believe in asking the same question over again just so it gets on my video clip. But if anybody back home is watching this, I encourage them to flip back a little bit and look at your answers, both yours and Mr. Dodge's answers to Ranking Member Upton in regard to the coordination that you all are doing. And it sounds like, although it was classified, it sounds like you all are headed in the right direction. Do you have anything to add? Are you doing the same kind of coordination on physical threats to the pipelines as well?
The short answer is yes, sir, and that then is also then demonstrated through the exercises, and that information is also shared through the ESCC meetings that we have when the government partners are there and talking about the physical threats that happen to the pipelines with the voluntary reports, and FBI is there, and that has been highlighted from our industry partners to the FBI.
All right, Mr. Dodge, did you want to add anything in regard to the physical threats? Because we already talked about the cyber.
The only thing I would add is that in terms of the pipeline activity, OICE is also involved with that activity. They work with DOE to conduct a security briefing threats. In addition to the ESCC, they're actually actively involved with the ONG-SCC as well.
And because they're continuing concerns, I think that the questions that Mr. O'Halloran just asked are also important in some of the questions we'll continue to look at this committee. And if you need our help passing legislation or something, we want to make sure that we have as much safety as we can, and I appreciate that. Assistant Secretary Evans, when it comes to pipelines, TSA is taking the lead in developing some voluntary guidelines for industry to follow. According to reports from the GAO and CRS, they have only a handful of people working on cybersecurity for pipelines. Do the TSA staffing and resource constraints concern you? And this is a lob in hopes that maybe DOE ought to take the lead.
So, as you know, through the Oil and Natural Gas SEC, as well as the government, the Government Coordinating Council, we work jointly with Department of Homeland Security and TSA. And so our resources we use to leverage the TSA resources because we recognize as a government that we need to address this vulnerability.
And I appreciate that, but am I correct, and I may not be, but am I correct that DOE is actually putting more capacity and has more folks working on this than TSA?
I would not presume to answer a TSA staffing issue, sir, at this time, because I know that that's an internal discussion to DHS, and it's more appropriate for that question to go to DHS at this time.
Maybe you can encourage them to talk to us about this as well. I appreciate it. Would you describe the Energy Government Coordinating Council and DOE's role in that council?
We're the co-chair of the Government Coordinating Council with Department of Homeland Security. We help craft the agenda going forward. We work with DHS hand in hand and our government partners. A good example of that work, we just recently did a top secret SCI briefing for the Interstate Natural Gas Association of America. So I'm keeping with the pipeline theme so that we could really share with them and coordinate through the intelligence community what risks that they are facing, and that was to the executive board of that association.
And I don't even remember now who it was. They didn't reveal any secrets, but they felt like that was a useful, somebody reported to me they felt like that was a useful, it was good use of their time and it was a useful meeting. In this space, should DOE have the lead role to ensure the safe and reliable flow of energy across the U.S.?
I believe, sir, right now that we do have that role as it relates to the sector-specific responsibilities that we have that are outlined both in the FAST Act and the presidential directives.
Well, and as I've revealed my prejudices in this regard, I do think that DOE is probably where I think DOE should probably be in the leadership role in coordinating preparedness and cybersecurity efforts on all aspects of our pipelines. And you've already indicated you can't talk about staffing, but would you disagree with me on that?
I believe that we have unique expertise, and as the sector-specific agency, we use that expertise across the energy sector and with our partners in private industry.
I appreciate it very much. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I yield back.
The gentleman yields back. The chair now recognizes the gentlelady from Washington, Ms. McRogers.